So before we get into this video, I have to talk about my friend, Devin Tracy, aka Atheism is Unstoppable, and how he was recently banned on Patreon, and there was no real reason for it. They said hate speech. We all know that is a vague, nebulous term, but it's important to note that if you were a patron of Devin and you don't want to sign up over at Censored, you can actually support him on Subscribestar. The link to his Subscribestar will be in the description of this video, and it will be in the description of the podcast. So please, go over and support Devin. He needs it right now more than ever. He's getting nuked because the crackdown is upon us and you have to fight back against it. Subscribestar.com/atheism. Right now in the state of New York, we are witnessing an absolute miracle. We are witnessing the governor's race, which was a foregone conclusion for the Democratic candidate Kathy Hochul, all of a sudden tightening up because Lee Zeldin, the candidate on the Republican side, is running on the correct issue. And of course, that correct issue is crime, and specifically New York State's bail reform law, which automatically releases violent and dangerous criminals over and over again, and New Yorkers are sick of it. We're going to talk about why Zeldin is actually coming into this race, why he has a chance at winning, and what the response is on the other side of today's sponsor, but I gotta toss it over to them, and then we're going to come back on the other side. Have you ever wondered why you lose that youthful glow, why you have so many visible signs of aging? Well, it turns out that a big portion of the equation is a protein called collagen, and to be more accurate, we're talking about losing the ability to produce collagen. It turns out every decade, your collagen production drops about 10%, and studies have shown if you supplement with something like Health with Justice, you can actually fight back the aging process and keep that youthful glow for much, much longer. Now, the reason I recommend Health with Justice is because this actually has 5 different types of the protein that you need, so it's extra effective, way better than that over-the-counter stuff. And unlike when you go to a store, this actually comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee, and for viewers of my audience, if you go to healthwithjustice.com, you can get 51% off. 51% off, 60-day trial. Restore the youth today. Lee Zeldin, up until recently, is a candidate that I knew very little about. And the reason why I knew very little about him is because he's not my congressman. He's a congressman out on Long Island. And he's a guy that is running for governor as a Republican against the Democrat Kathy Hochul in the 2022 gubernatorial race. However, things have really started to heat up after a couple of instances really drew some attention to Lee Zeldin's campaign. First and foremost, when he was giving a speech on bail reform and on criminals being automatically released, according to New York State law, he was actually attacked by a person.
There's only one option. You're done.
Now, this was originally reported by the media as an assassination attempt on Lee Zeldin. However, that is not the case, and in my original video where I stated it was an assassination attempt, I was in fact wrong. I put corrections all over that video so you guys could know that that wasn't an assassination attempt, because it turns out the weapon utilized was a plastic thing for punching people. It's like a cat self-defense tool. I will put it up on screen, and for those of you who are listening via Apple or Spotify, it's basically cat ears that wrap around your fingers like brass knuckles that you can use to punch somebody, but it is not in any way, shape, or form a deadly weapon. And the irony of Zeldin being attacked by this person on stage as he's talking about bail reform, and by the way, Zeldin, total boss, grabbing the hand which had what appeared to be a bladed weapon in it in order to prevent himself from being hit with this weapon, is that this person was automatically released initially after being charged with the assault that they committed on video against a gubernatorial candidate. On top of that, Kathy Hochul was publishing directions and where Zeldin was speaking, calling him a radical and telling people to go after Zeldin because of his evil election-stealing MAGA tour. So this guy might have been incited by the governor, but I guess that's totally normal, or at least Kathy Hochul thought it was totally normal and totally acceptable, and thus Zeldin got some very deserved national attention, and he's actually parlayed that into a lot of success. A recent poll actually shows that Zeldin has closed the gap in a race that was once a 24-point race in favor of Hochul to just 4 points. Now, the poll has a margin of error of 2.9%, so it could be as close as 1 point or as far apart as 7 points, but it is still a dramatic shift in the polling, and all of this is due 100% to the fact that Lee Zeldin is running on crime and running against bail reform, because in New York State, we have an insane law that basically says if you commit a whole bunch of crimes, a lot of them serious violent crimes, you will be automatically released same day, hours later from jail to reoffend again. And by the way, a lot of people focus on the fact that this is called bail reform, and they talk about how, oh, you shouldn't be able to set bail for these crimes because you're criminalizing poverty. Bail reform is kind of misleading because it's not only the fact that you can't set bail, you can't use judgment, the judges, in order to hold somebody pre-trial until their trial, even though they're proving to be an ongoing threat to society. So what this law really should be called is the Automatic Guaranteed Release for Serious Violent Felonies Act, no matter how many violent felonies you commit in a row, as long as they're the correct violent felonies. And by the way, if you think these are minuscule issues, if you think these are no big deal crimes, just look at the list of crimes that you are guaranteed automatic release after committing, no matter how many times you commit them. Remember, this is a list of the following crimes that you are eligible for automatic release under New York State's bail reform law. Manslaughter in the second degree, aggravated vehicular homicide, which by the way is something that really sticks out to me because recently there was a case out of the state of New York, it actually happened in Rockaway, Queens, where a bunch of girls decided to get into a fight inside a store. I'm sure this was over the pettiest and trashiest of reasons, but during the course of the fight, one of the girls actually got into her car with her friend, decided to pull up onto the curb and try to run over the people after the conclusion of the fight. Now, I'm stopping the video right here, but what you'll notice is that this man, who is handicapped by the way, sitting out in front of the store in a walker that converts into a chair, was killed when this woman carelessly ran over him. Now, I'm awaiting an update on the status of this perpetrator. I'm waiting for them to be caught so I can name them and shame them for you, but just so you know, that aggravated vehicular manslaughter is the charge that would likely be applied to this person, and under New York State bail reform law, this person who had so little regard for human life that she decided to try to hit people that were starting a fight with her or that she got into a fight with and ended up killing a handicapped person is eligible for automatic same-day release. Right out the gates, just let her out, let her go on with her life because no big deal, all she did was murder a handicapped person. And by the way, any way you want to charge this, she's gonna get out of prison because if you charge it as a second-degree manslaughter, guess what? Automatic release. If you charge it as a hate crime because the guy's disabled, even though that's totally not applicable, assault as a hate crime, not eligible for bail, not eligible for anything other than automatic release. Assault in the third degree, aggravated vehicular assault, making a terroristic threat, and criminal possession of a gun on school grounds / criminal possession of a firearm. Now, it was really good of the state of New York, of these legislators, to actually put the terroristic threat right next to the possessing a gun on school grounds legislation, because it's important to note that no combination of the crimes listed for automatic release can get you held in jail pre-trial. So theoretically, according to New York State law, if you were a person who called in a threat to a school, you showed up with the gun to act on that threat, and you were stopped before you fired shots at anybody, you would be eligible for automatic release same day. Now, of course, in that scenario, in that hypothetical scenario, the FBI or the feds would intercede and actually detain the person because there are federal laws against terrorism, but that is how insane New York State is, and considering Kathy Hochul is trying to arrest the guns, put together a gun registry in order to sue the gun manufacturers because, you know, the real issue is guns.
No, they're welcome. We want to continue their work. So first question.
Good morning, Governor. Grace Ashford with the New York Times. Congratulations on 6 months in office.
Thank you.
There's been a lot of talk about bail reform lately, with Mayor Adams calling for changes. Yesterday, DCGS Commissioner testified that the available data didn't provide a complete picture. Even so, the available data has been sort of debated between Democrats and Republicans, and everyone sort of seems to think what they have vindicates them. I'm curious whether you see a need for a conversation right now about changes to the bail laws, and if not, why?
I'm very data-driven, and I'm very interested in the data that comes out. But as the mayor mentioned, we are talking about damming up individual rivers. Today, the river we're talking about is the river that leads illegal guns from other states to our cities and in the hands of individuals who are using them. So that is our focus of what we're doing here today.
It's weird how this bail reform that she's a champion of is soft on bringing guns into schools. On top of that, we also have the criminal sale of a firearm to a minor that is also totally protected.
It's not just Elise Stefanik and Republicans. Even Chief Administrative Judge Lawrence Marks told lawmakers this week that he believes that judges are coming together and agreeing that they need more power.
And I'm looking for the data that shows me that bail reform is the reason that somehow crime is going up in 90 of 100 cities in New York, why guns are flowing from Georgia with more frequency and Virginia and Ohio to here than they were. I'm focused on dealing with what I have control over right now, and that is my laser focus. The issue before me is today, in real time, bring the resources together to stop guns from coming into our streets and resulting in the shooting of a baby and the murder of our police officers. Nick.
Are we seeing similar issues in New York City that we're seeing also in like Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Albany, and not just, general gun violence, but kind of similar systemic root causes for what's going on?
Nick, this is exactly why I'm excited about the new Office of Gun Violence Prevention in the Department of Health.
Now you might ask yourself, after seeing that they're letting people out automatically for selling a gun to a minor, who is this law actually there to protect? And the answer to that question is, in fact, the gangbangers and their suppliers. Because if you're a minor and you're buying a gun, the chances are about 100% that you are in a gang and you're buying that gun in order to do damage. But Kathy Hochul says, you know what? We're not just going to protect the minor who might find themselves in this whole criminal justice system just based on accident, just based on the fact that they were forced to join a gang. We're going to protect the person selling the gun to that minor. This is all while they're trying to get rid of legitimate gun manufacturers and build a civil case against them. They're going to let the dealers, the illegal gun sellers, out of jail pre-trial, no bail at all whatsoever, automatic release. You can also launder money for a terrorist organization and be automatically released. You can also possess and promote child pornography and be subject to automatic release. You want to torture an animal? Well, guess what? New York State is the correct place for you because that is subject to automatic release. How about grand larceny, a felony theft? A-okay, I guess that's not going to lead to a bunch of people mass looting high-end stores because you're subject to automatic release for that too.
Yo, free vote! Free vote!
A year ago, parts of the city were out of control. Crowds were seen smashing storefront after storefront. The mayhem continued night after night. At one point, there was even a so-called looting dance party on the streets of Soho. The mob seemingly pillaging at will. Many were caught on tape, some with faces visible.
I took all the papers and photos off the sheet.
Even posted live their own videos of their actions those nights.
Got the Rolex store.
Police far outnumbered and seemingly unprepared. But many arrests were made in Manhattan and along some commercial streets in the Bronx. Videos show how numerous locally owned Bronx stores were ransacked. NYPD data we reviewed shows 118 arrests were made in the Bronx during the worst of the looting. Since then, the NYPD says the DA and courts have dismissed 73 of those cases. 18 remain open, and there are 19 convictions for mostly lesser counts like trespassing, counts which carry no jail time.
You want to sell drugs to kids? Well, congratulations, that is an automatic release. How about soliciting prostitution on school grounds? Guess what? Automatic release. How about failing to register as a sex offender? Guess what? Also eligible for automatic release, because why would we want to keep track of those people? You can also bribe and receive bribes without any issue in the state of New York. You can also hinder a prosecution, destroy evidence, tamper with the jury. All of that is A-okay, and the state of New York, no matter how many times you do it, is not going to hold you in jail pre-trial at all whatsoever. It is so unbelievably wild that this is the law of the land in the state of New York, and before you idiots out there in the comments say you voted for it, in reality and actuality, that is not the case. When people voted for Andrew Cuomo, they didn't vote for him to let all the criminals out. Andrew Cuomo did that because he was in favor of making sure that he looked good on criminal justice issues for his eventual presidential run. That is the reason that this law was implemented. However, once he was ousted as governor, it turns out a true believer, Governor Kathy Hochul, was installed in his place. And guess what? She's never won an election. This is the first time that she's up for election, and this issue, above all other issues, is what is putting Zeldin within striking distance of Governor Kathy Hochul. Now, I know some of you are going to say, innocent until proven guilty. Well, listen up, idiot. Innocent until proven guilty does not mean that you are immune from pretrial detention. In fact, the reason you have a right to a speedy trial in the United States of America is because when the Constitution was written, when the amendments were passed, it was presumed, as it is rooted in the English common law tradition, that you would be held pre-trial. In fact, bail is actually a reform that allows you to substitute your person for something of value in order to ensure that you show up to your trial. If you want to introduce reforms to ensure that the right of a speedy trial is preserved, then that's where the reform needs to be. But this nonsense that you get released automatically time and time again, even if you don't show up for court, is ridiculous. Obviously, if you're an ongoing threat, you should be held in pretrial detention. That shouldn't be a long period of time. We should have the trial speedily, unless, of course, there is demonstrable cause to delay the trial, which would be shown by the prosecution in a hearing, or the defense waives their right to a speedy trial, and thus you would have to have continuous hearings to determine whether or not the person can be released. So yes, we can respect the rights of people guaranteed by the Constitution without making up this new standard about how pretrial detention is totally not in the tradition of English common law and definitely was not a thing that the founders considered, blah, blah, blah. That's the whole reason we have a right to a speedy trial. Look, I can go over case after case of this law leading to more crime. We already talked about in a whole separate video, this man sucker punching an Asian woman on the streets of Manhattan being charged with an assault as a part of a hate crime and being automatically released, and then attacking a transit worker with a brick, breaking his collarbone, breaking his nose. Since bail reform, he had been charged with assault and automatically released about 6 times, including an incident where he was assaulting somebody, charged, let out, and same day assaulted another person. Then he smashed a window and attacked the cop.
When Kathy Hochul says that there's no data to support our call to overhaul cashless bail, we think about individual cases where people have lost their lives at the hands of someone who was released on cashless bail. And any one of these stories is enough data to justify action. The family of 93-year-old Connie Torrey in Syracuse, she was murdered by somebody released on cashless bail. In Westchester, somebody was arrested on a double manslaughter in Yonkers. The person who committed that offense was released on cashless bail for an arson. In July, there was a case where 2 Mexican cartel drug smugglers were busted with $1.2 million worth of crystal meth. Think of how many people that can kill. Instantly released on cashless bail. Now, if somebody who advocates for cashless bail wants to make the argument that if you are not a danger, it's a low-level offense, you're not a flight risk, you have a past clean record, and the only reason why you would be stuck behind bars is because you cannot afford $100. That's why we're talking about judges having discretion.
The fact of the matter is, this race is huge, and I know a lot of you out there are going to be saying you don't care about New York, oh, you deserved it for living in a blue state, blue city, whatever, but in reality, it's important that Kathy Hochul be defeated even in a blue state. It's one of the reasons why it was incredibly important that Chesa Boudin lose the recall election in San Francisco, because when people see that these policies don't fly, even in blue states, you're going to see these policies change, and the national effect of going back on crime, regressing on crime, is going to be delayed, if not altered. Once stuff really gets bad, once crime spikes high enough, it's going to take decades to remedy these issues. You have to nip this in the bud, and this election symbolically would be America nipping this issue in the bud. So if you're in the state of New York, vote for Lee Zeldin. I am endorsing this man, Sean, the guy who doesn't vote in his statewide elections because they're uncompetitive, who doesn't vote in his congressional elections because they're uncompetitive. I legitimately have Democrats running unopposed in my congressional elections and in my state senate race and in my city council race. I'm saying go out and support this guy. And if you have the money, if you're interested, if you're one of these people who likes to fund candidates, I will link this guy's stuff in the description of this video so that you can support him. Kathy Hochul is on the ropes. She's ducking debates with Lee Zeldin. Already 2 official debates have been ducked by her. She's telling people that disagree with her that they need to get out of her state because she's a thug authoritarian.
Say that the era of Trump and Zeldin and Molinaro, just jump on a bus and head down to Florida where you belong, okay? Get out of town. Get out of town. Because you don't represent our values. You are not New Yorkers.
And her entire strategy for staving off Lee Zeldin's insurgent campaign is to say that Orange Man bad, he likes Orange Man, isn't he bad because of Orange Man? It's pathetic, she's pathetic, but it will send a national message if she loses the governorship. So do what you can. If you're in the state, definitely vote. Vote Zeldin. Yes, I'm on board with it. If you're out of state, share this video. Go support his campaign financially if you can. And if you can't support it financially, post videos of crimes that you see occurring in the state of New York. Talk about the automatic release. Talk about how this is a trend. If Kathy Hochul wins, even with all this chaos going around, the National Democratic Party will take direction from this. This could be the policy that is implemented in your state, and in a lot of states, these policies are being implemented either at the state level or by prosecutors at the local level. We have to push back against it, and we have to tell all these pathetic loser Republicans that are going to blow their races that they should be running on crime. This is an example of a blue state, a progressive state, and this election could go the way of the Republican based solely on the crime issue. Anyway, that's all I really have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, show me by leaving a like. Subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social media. Support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about the gubernatorial race in the state of New York. Till next time.